Hey folks, here we go, talking about Mercury turning direct. And I'm going to be talking about this because Mercury's been retrograde. We can see here, we have a chart here that shows on the 10th, on March 10th, which is like, March 10th is actually Tuesday, but March 9th, let's see the exact time here, hours. March 9th is tomorrow, and that's what time tomorrow? Let me see this change. I'm on Pacific time. Yeah, so tomorrow evening. Yeah, so it's really March 10th. We're going to have Mercury turn direct. Now, Mercury has been retrograde since, let's go back here and look. Mercury's been retrograde since, I think it was February 14th or something. Let me go back here. Yeah, February 14th, 15th. So since February 15th, Mercury has been retrograde. A lot of shifts have happened since February 15th, of course, day after Valentine's Day, I guess. And this whole, if you think back around that time, so since then, there's been a lot of shifts, a lot of paradigm shifting going on. And of course, it's happened in the sign of Aquarius. And of course, Aquarius is that sign that's related to the culture, the population, the sort of proletariat, like the people in society. It shows our connections to each other. It shows our individuality, connected to each other. And so, the sun has been there, and the sun is still there. If we take this forward from the 15th, we'll see now we're here. And, usually Mercury's retrograde for about 3.5 weeks or so. So it puts the sun here at about, 24 degrees or so. And so this is, so by end of the 9th and into the 10th here on the West Coast, that's when we have it. So again, during that time, there's been a lot of shifts happening. And a lot of them revolve around our individual and collective realities, especially Mercury retrograde in this sign of Aquarius. Now, again, as I spoke about in the Mercury retrograde video a couple weeks ago, when it started, like right before it started, it's really a time for us to engage and look at our collective, realities with each other, and to really listen and introspect about the messages that are coming from each other, from the world, in all of our sort of public domains, which could be, all of the shared spaces we have, of course, social, political, economic, however you want to look at it, and also in our immediate environment, also as it has to do with our immediate culture around us, like our culture at work, our culture in our family, our individuality within a collective. That's what Aquarius is. And the individual part of it is the Leo, and the collective is the Aquarius. So there's a lot of attention on the collective right now because of that Sun and Mercury in Aquarius. But again, as I'm recording this now, we're right on the cusp of this full moon. I'm recording it here on the 8th at about 4 p.m. If I take this back a few hours, I'm recording it. Is it the 8th? Yeah, the 8th at 4 p.m. We're like about right here. What is it? About right here. And so it's our individuality within the collective that we're really grappling with now on this full moon, as Mercury also is about to go direct. So we've got about one more day of it, and then by that time, in a couple days, Mercury will be direct. So now it's what's called stationary direct, which means it's basically stopped in the sky. So if I look here, if you see the degrees, Mercury is 409 here, right? 409. Now, if I go forward one day, you'll see it's hardly moved at all, 404, right? And then the next day, it's 406, but it's no longer going retrograde. So this is actually called stationary direct. So it's actually slowing down. You see it really kind of stops in the sky for a few days. And that's the planet appears to stop. Now, when it stops, when it's stationary direct or stationary retrograde like it is now, it winds up being a very concentrated force, very concentrated energy that we can get kind of stuck in again, and kind of stuck in our sort of pattern. And this is one of the facets of the retrograde cycle. So again, one of the big things I said a couple of weeks ago before this started was it's going to be a time to really listen to the messages that are coming your way. Listen to the messages that are coming your way based on things like your social involvements, your social structure, even things like your politics, the leaders you like, the world you want to advocate. What is it reflecting back to you? What are you hearing? And are you adjusting based on what you're hearing? Are you listening? Are you being objective? Are you being intelligent about it? Because Mercury is where we're supposed to listen to what happens. Again, I said this a couple of weeks ago, and I always say it, communication is not just about what we say. It's what others also say to us. In fact, in many ways, listening is the most important part of communication. Otherwise, you're not communicating, you're just talking. So for those opinions to change, for Mars opinions to change and become Mercury intelligence, we need to first listen to something that's not just our own opinion. So this has been really big. What has the collective been telling you lately about the ideas you already believe about the world? Again, look at things specifically. We can say the world. Look at the specific qualities of the world that Aquarius rules. Let's say, again, things like maybe politics, the social fabric around you, what the culture and society is really doing. How much do we really need each other? How much do our ideas about the world we're building together, have they shifted in the last couple of weeks? Has it shifted what's possible, what you think is going to happen? Notice this. We've had some big shifts the last couple of weeks about what we think is going to happen. Are we adjusting to it? Are we being intelligent about it? Or are we collapsing into fear and paranoia or anger or rage about it? Again, a couple of the big things here in the US and even also in the world is this whole idea about, one of the things is a sort of collective news story has been the coronavirus stuff. And that sort of negative, or that sort of, collective worldview is, we're all really looking at it now. We're all really looking at our interrelations with each other, not just in our society, but as a global citizen. Again, these last few weeks, that's just exploded more than it was before. It's exploded even more and made us rethink all kinds of things, like how we communicate, how we gather, what that means. And again, some people might get angry at, the Chinese or the government. How is the government responding? How are governments responding? How are our leaders, again, which is this Leo energy, this full moon in Leo that we have, that's related to our leaders. How are they responding to this, let's say, this collective crisis that we have right now? You have different ideas about it, right? But we're all seeing it, and we're seeing something different now than we were a few weeks ago about how our leaders would respond to a crisis or what they're saying. Again, and what that means for all of us collectively. We also have, for example, in the US, we have big elections coming, a lot of politics being discussed right now. That looks a heck of a lot different than it did a few weeks ago. Again, not to get into so much advocacy, but just literally explaining, there was a whole, especially, the Republican side, it's already, the president is there, but the Democratic, especially, there was this kind of, 3 weeks ago, we didn't really know how it was going to land. We hadn't really started the primaries yet, even, or they were about to really start. They might have just started. I don't remember 3 weeks ago, but we had Sanders and Biden, and then we even had Buttigieg and Klobuchar and Warren. The whole thing was still there. We've had Mike Bloomberg. All of this was like, we didn't know what was going to happen. Now we have a pretty good idea. And it started with a lot of hope, at least for those who like, let's say, Bernie Sanders. And, he, won narrowly a couple of the early races, but again, barely about 30%, but he had the plurality. And then you had others in a more establishment lane that were kind of clogging up and taking votes away from each other. And then what happened, a big shift last week, was all of them dropped out. And then Joe Biden rolled over, rolled through these last primaries and just overperformed, at least to what we thought was possible. Again, it shifted our whole reality. Now we have to see it a different way. And again, how are we interpreting that? Are we looking at it as, blaming this, blaming that, or looking at it this way or that way? Again, one of the things that I've noticed, especially with politics and whatnot these days, is it's just so much scapegoating and blaming going on. And again, I talk about something like scapegoating and blaming, particularly as I talk about Mercury retrograde, because what's the big astrological scapegoat? Mercury retrograde. People don't know anything about astrology, but they know about Mercury retrograde. In many ways, it's kind of like a big scapegoat. It's like an astrological scapegoat. And as I've always said, what happens with Mercury retrograde or other retrograde cycles is they alert us to something that we need to pay attention to, which is, again, listening more, paying attention, and adjusting to what is going on. I'll just give my experience quickly about the political thing. I talked about a little bit the other day about my engagement with getting involved, especially pretty intensely with politics, the last few weeks, particularly when Bernie Sanders came out and had that interview where he's talking about Castro and all of this again. And it was like, oh man, I don't think this is good. It's not good to be talking about Castro and socialism right before we're starting to vote and all that. And again, a lot of his supporters didn't appreciate me saying that, because then it's like, okay, well, it's the same thing Obama said and blah, blah. Yes, but it's a different context. Obama was talking about it in this way. Obama wasn't a democratic socialist who's now talking about Castro with his history. I don't think this is going to work out well for Bernie. I don't think he should be saying this kind of stuff. It's not really worked out very well. I think it's going to be dangerous. And then right before the voting last week, I said the same kind of stuff like this. We got to watch this here. This could be difficult. Again, people not hearing it. And then just, he wound up getting rolled in all those contests. Again, so as things shifted, I was like personally just looking at it like, man, I don't know. Are we paying attention to this? Is it this could be a problem? Since then, again, there's been a lot of blaming and scapegoating. Oh, it's the establishment. It's this, it's that. It's not Bernie. He's fine. His message, he's right. He's right about it all. It's just the messaging, the establishment. Again, that's an opinion. That's a point of view. Not saying it's wrong. I'm saying, but I'm looking at it and saying, these are the kinds of things that happen where our paradigm gets shifted. I'm using it as an example. Our paradigm gets shifted and we're given the opportunity to adjust or change or not. And by the way, I looked, he's not changing anything. He's going to keep going. His supporters are like, no, keep doing the same thing. He's right. He's right. He's going to win. And this is what they believe. And this is what he believes. I saw there's a couple interviews right after that Super Tuesday thing. And he was like, hey, we got the right policies. We're doing right. And he wasn't shifting at all. He's like, no, this is what we're doing. Now, he also did make an ad which featured Obama, which again was a different thing. So I think he was trying to adjust as well. You can see him trying to adjust and maybe try to bring in more mainstream people. But this is totally a Mercury retrograde thing, because look at what happened right before that. You had all these people in it. All of a sudden, again, not just Mercury retrograde, but what happened in the transits was the moon also went through Mrigashira and Ardra. This kind of like, Ardra is very severe. It's ruled by Shiva. It tends to destroy things and re-establish things. So when the moon went through Mrigashira and Ardra, that's when the Super Tuesday happened, which was last week. Right before that, like last weekend, is when all of those establishment candidates dropped out and consolidated around Biden. And it was like, oh boy, this could be hard because, you know, so with myself, I started looking at the voter totals. He's never gotten much more than 30%. So it looks like a problem. So again, but how do we adjust? How do we adjust? Do we adjust and say, okay, maybe there's an issue with messaging. Maybe there's an issue with this. Maybe we need to reach out more to others, and try to build consensus with other candidates or other things? Or are we just always defending ourselves like we're right, everybody else is wrong? What are we doing here? So again, these are Mercury retrograde themes in general. And we can see that playing. I see it playing out just regardless of where you come down in. I'm trying not to be real judgmental about it, but I do have feelings about it. I can see where, and it's not because I want that. I actually wanted Bernie. I think his policies are the best for sure. But I've also always seen where his message is going to be really hard. And again, it puts people in a tricky bind because he's the most respected politician. Pretty much everybody can see that he's sincere and that all the stuff he's saying they really want. They're just not sure they want his method of delivery, a socialist revolution, in order to get these things. That's always been something where I'm like, this messaging is going to be hard. I'm not sure everybody's going to vote for that. It's a big thing to ask people. Yeah, they want healthcare. Yeah, they want this. Yeah, they want the rich people to pay more. Everybody wants that. But if you're wrapping it up in now we're going to have a revolution and it's like, well, I'm not sure that's the way we want it to look. I've been saying it for months. The retrograde really brought it out, though. It really brought out the results and also the polarizing around the issue, where now it's all blown up because we've had this experience where now we see pretty much a verdict on that to some extent. It's not over by any means. No, it's not over. And it will be interesting to see what happens going forward, because maybe this was a Mercury retrograde blip where, in my opinion, what should have happened or what could be happening is it was an opportunity to reach out and acknowledge this messaging, really head it on or really take it on. From my point of view, I think it was to acknowledge that this is not necessarily messaging because you hear it coming from people. It's not like my opinion. It's a poll. We have polling and all those kind of stuff too, that it scares people. And then to adjust or to take it on or to find something, but that's not actually what's been happening. It's been like, no, we're right. That's it. From the supporters and the candidates. So I'm not sure that's the message on that level. So we'll see what happens. Again, in other ways, we have other people that have other messages too that are coming out. And again, is sort of buyer's remorse already. Like, oh my God, if it's not Bernie, that's going to be Biden. And Biden just looks so bad. Like, oh my God, what have we done here? And again, rethinking what we have. Like, can we do it over? Can we do it over? Can we go back and do it over? How about we get rid of Biden and, okay, Klobuchar is fine. How about her? Like anyone now. But and so it's like on the Democratic side, this is what's going on, right? So, and so we can definitely see this playing out. Again, I'm talking about this a lot with the politics because we've seen this whole shift now happen. We weren't sure a few weeks ago. Now with Mercury retrograde, it's revealed something and showed us something that we should be listening to. We should be listening to, and what's the message that we're listening to? This is a big part of what's going on. So again, this is on a collective level. On a personal level, we we can feel these things in our, see these things in our life as well, probably. What's been happening in your life that also mirrors this, message that's been coming to you. Again, doesn't have to be from the culture. It can be from the people in your life. You live as part of a culture. What are they reflecting back to you? Are you listening to it? Are you listening to what they're telling you about what they want from you? Again, maybe you don't want to give it, and maybe that's fine. It doesn't mean you have to. It doesn't mean, you're supposed to change everything. No, you're supposed to listen and really introspect about what what specifically are you, what specifically are you looking to, bring forth in your life now? 1 second. Yeah, and so, what is that? What are you supposed to be bringing forth in your life now? And again, things that are taking you away from it, or that might be taking you away from it, are also really tempting you maybe to sort of lose your way, to sort of lose your path. And those things are saying, okay, now give me more attention. Listen to me, give me more attention to these things that might be distracting you or something. And you have to say, no, wait, I don't want to do that. Or you might say, yes, you know what, this is worth it. So this is what the retrograde really brings out on a karmic level, is this listening to what is coming back to us, also really communicating with the voice in our head and staying connected to our values and our value system and what is really coming from our network of people. Like I said, in the full moon in Leo, we're all a king of something. We all have power over a sort of domain. And again, within a group of people. And how we share that power with the kingdom is easy to see by what's being reflected back to us. And this Mercury retrograde back and forth now in Aquarius is trying to gift you with that capacity to adjust and to serve the needs of the kingdom. Again, do you want your message to resonate, or do you want to be right? Do you want to be right and have the high ground and say, no, wait a minute, I'm right. That's it. I'm right. Maybe it is. Maybe your righteousness is more important than adjusting. That's perfectly legitimate. Again, even when I was talking about the politics a minute ago, I wasn't saying even that people are wrong for sticking to what this is or whatever. I'm just observing it. And again, there are times and moments and situations where, no, the righteousness of my views and principles are worth maybe not even winning over. I'm willing to lose on these terms. And that's totally legitimate. These are the questions, though. Is there a way to win and still not compromise on your values or your convictions? These are the questions that come up with the Leo-Aquarius axis, or at least it should be. Because again, ultimately, Aquarius is about what's best for everyone as much as possible. But one of the things that can happen, but Aquarius is also about things like, frankly, even things like socialism. That's a total Aquarius thing. And rather than being like a revolutionary, actually governing, for example, this is the Leo-Aquarius axis. Like Aquarius is about movements, mass movements, cultural movements. And then Leo is about now taking that movement and being the king, being empowered by it. Now it's not just a rebellion or a movement, a social movement, a social cause. Now we take power. So again, this is one of the things, again, these are big themes that are coming out of, particularly in that Democratic Party, where one of the candidates himself is literally saying, we're going to have a mass movement and that's what's going to make it happen. And it hasn't happened. Again, we have the data. They haven't showed up for it. So what kind of adjustments do we make? This Mercury retrograde in Aquarius is saying, so do we adjust the message, or do we stay pure to the message even if we don't take power? Or is there a way to do both? Again, I'm using the political example because we can also really see it. Again, whatever part you come down on it, but it's also in your own life with other, like, let's say, messages that you want to put out there in the world. So I just did a full moon, the full moon forecast for this. And by the way, as you know, just to say that you can get the forecasts, the daily forecast. I just did one for this full moon in Leo, but also doing these daily forecasts. One of the things that when you get these forecasts and you stay involved with it is that it's not just a matter of these things in general. It's not just a matter of in general, these are the energies, right? Like for me specifically, these energies of the collective, which is Aquarius, and the individual, which is Leo. For me, as a Gemini, it affects me in the 3rd and 9th houses because I'm Gemini. So that sign of Aquarius is actually my 9th house. So for me, it's very much, showing me that there is that all of these things are, have to really revolve around my teachings, or not just my teachings, but myself as a teacher, and wanting to be inspiring and of good and bringing things that are uplifting is more important for me than being like right about some kind of thing. So again, this is why I gave the example, I especially engaged in quite a few like conversations and put a lot of energy into that earlier this week, trying to kind of, from my point of view, sound the alarm that, hey, you got to be careful. Maybe it's not everybody else. Maybe with politics, maybe Bernie Sanders needs to change his message a little bit if he wants to win, blah, 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 and whatever. And again, I just saw the energy that it created and the tension. And then I just went back and then just torched it all. I just deleted all of it, even though I'd spent quite a bit of time for a few days. That sort of reversal, that retrograde. I'm like, okay, you know what? For me, I kind of got the message. It didn't really feel so good. So the reason is because me as a Gemini, this cycle of that moon, of this sun going through Aquarius is in my 9th house. So rather than having to get engaged in that, it's much more of a 9th house cycle for me. And 9th house is about our higher teachings and higher wisdom and wanting to really stand for something higher and bigger than just the battles in the world or whatever it was. And so that's the cycle that I'm working on. So here at the Astrology Training Lab, like I say, it's if you go to astrologytraininglab.com, it goes to the site, only 50 cents, and 14 days you get new and full moon updates. And then you also get 8.5 hours of classes, daily forecast, a private Facebook group where people discuss these things. So again, I really encourage people to also stay connected to to how these things work every day. And also seeing how on these lunation cycles, especially new moons and full moons, these are the big cycles that we're working on. And so this Mercury retrograde, again, it's no different. What house is that falling in for you? Right? Is it falling in the 1st house? Like, are you in Aquarius? So the whole thing is about your own identity. Or is it falling like with me in the 9th house? Because I have Gemini, so this is in 9th house. So, but as we're moving forward, you want to introspect about these things. Introspect about the important messages that have come your way in the last couple weeks. In the last few weeks, and the big shift and the paradigm shift that's happened in the world over these last few weeks with things like coronavirus. Now, again, we're all dealing with that. What is that bringing out in you? One second. What is that bringing out in you? Is it bringing out this, this idea that you are, oh, sorry. Now, see, this is my retrograde moment. I went to Instacart, and they were supposed to come 2 hours later. Now they're here. Okay. So listening to the messages, literally while we're doing this, the phone is ringing, and they're here. They're not supposed to get here until 5. No, not even 5, but 5:30 or 6. Anyway, so are you listening to the messages and adjusting? Or are you doing like I'm doing now and getting mixed messages and missing the appointment here? So this is what the retrograde is about, what the Mercury retrograde is about. It's about us listening and really communicating correctly. And when someone is communicating with us, to hear it. Well, again, even in a situation like this, there's a miscommunication that didn't start from my end. It's very interesting because I just placed an order, this thing called Instacart. Do you all get that? Instacart is an app where you can get food delivered. It was supposed to be from 2 hours about a half hour ago, and they're almost always late. And here they are now. For some reason, 45 minutes they're here. Never happens. And it was a lot of items. It was about 15 items. And of course, now they're here. They were here 15 minutes ago. So again, this happens. So I'm going to have to now call them and get it redelivered, redone. And this is the thing. Again, I said Mercury is stationed. Mercury is stationary direct. And when things get stationed, when they kind of stop, and we can really feel the transition now into the next thing. So it's really a time to introspect about the last few weeks and how things have changed in the last few weeks from what your worldview was then before. Look at the way you're seeing the coronavirus and how that's changed your interactions with the collective and with the social group. Look at things like if you're into the politics here in the US or somewhere else, your other political situations in the world. Notice how that's shifted. If you're in your social groups, what messages have been coming out and how are you serving them? So again, these are the big things that have shifted for the last couple weeks. And, I hope this is, something that you can notice, something that you've seen yourself in, and that you can benefit from hearing me talk about this last Mercury retrograde cycle. So I'm going to cut it off here now and try to get my groceries. Otherwise, I might not get up till tomorrow. All right, folks, that's my Mercury retrograde in real time for you. So there you go. And you guys have a good one.